Today's episode is brought to you by Media for All, which was set up to help encourage more Black, Asian, and other ethnic talent into media, and to provide a support and mentoring network to ensure talent flourishes in the media industry that we all love. If you're looking for a mentor or would like to mentor young ethnic talent, check them out at mediaforall.org.uk, and it is all 100% free. Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton. I'm the founder of Automated Creative, and this is a podcast about the future of marketing. Every week or so, I have the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing one of our industry's leaders, and this week is no different. I'm on a call with Atilla Cansun, who is Chief Marketing Officer of Alliance Healthcare with Walgreens Boots Alliance. Atilla, for those of the audience who don't know who you are and what you do, can you give them an overview?
Yes, of course. Hi, Tom. I'm Atilla. Hi, everyone. I'm originally from Istanbul, Turkey. I grew up there, studied computer engineering. Out of all things, I did hardware engineering. And then I joined directly Procter & Gamble in marketing. I spent about 17 years there in various roles, then took over the Chief Marketing Officer role for Merck Consumer Health. And as of mid of 2020, I joined Walgreens Boots Alliance in my current role as the CMO for Alliance Healthcare.
So there must have been a moment in your career across all of those positions that was an absolute disaster, a real screw up, a real moment where you were red-faced, face-palming. But looking back, you're glad that it happened. Could you tell us a story about when that happened to you?
Right. So by far, everybody has these kind of negative moments or periods in their careers, but by far the worst that I would call indeed the F up is my assignment on fabric and home care with P&G. This is about 20 years ago. And I was a brand manager on Punica, a fruit juice, and they were, I think, at that point up for being divested or something like that. In any case, the company asked me, because I was very high rated, to lead their fabric care business in Germany, Austria, Switzerland. And it was the biggest business, the shiniest object, so to speak, and looked on paper like the right thing for me to do, part of a successful career. So I accepted it. I was delighted to join in. And the following year and a bit was probably the worst time of my 23 years of work life, because I did not feel comfortable with the category and the brands. And I didn't feel like I could connect with the brands, the challenge of the brands as such. And with hindsight, I thought that it was almost impossible to elevate laundry category as such, the cleaning of your laundry to an emotional level where I thought I could add value and be myself and be creative. So it was a very cramped period where I felt, not all the time, but most of the time, claustrophobic and placed in the wrong place. And it wasn't until Gabi Schupp, who now is a CEO with Villeroy and Boch in Germany, she suggested and took me out to another assignment into beauty care. And that's where I felt the huge difference between when I feel good in a category, I feel like there's a purpose I can personally relate to, and there's space for creativity for me to bloom. That's what makes a huge difference. And in a way, that assignment taught me to go by my heart, what feels good versus what makes sense. And what may have made sense for the career is to going for the biggest job, the fattest responsibility, the highest attention you could get. At that point, I was in the local business in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, DACH, we used to call it. And it taught me a big lesson that the person that I am, I can bring in my best and feel comfortable with myself as a marketeer, and also inspire and energize others when I feel good. And that doesn't happen. That magic doesn't happen when it already makes sense. And so from then on, the past 20 years, I've always made sure that, in my gut, in my heart, the next assignment, the next job, it felt good, it felt right. There's not only the element of the category and the brands, the portfolio. At a later point in time, I took over the OTC portfolio of health, Merck Health, and I could totally feel that there's great things to be done. You can touch millions of people, make a difference for their lives. And equally, in my current job, we work with pharmacies and pharmacists. It's again in the health category. And it makes me feel good, fulfilled, that the projects are not projects to make business, to, for our success, but success is when you touch a high number of people, when you work with pharmacies to, in this tough period, to make them feel maybe only a bit more comfortable, more confident in what they're doing. That gives me a great feeling. And that, I think, for me personally, has been an accelerator for my career.
So if you can teleport into the future a little bit and think about retiring, whenever that may be, and you're looking back on your career, how do you want people to remember you and your career?
So I like to believe that I'm far away from retirement. I really enjoy working and creating and adding value, but probably from the two categories, from the two territories that I felt comfortable with, beauty and health, most probably I would love to be remembered for the marketeer that pioneered and helped pharmacists to transition from the traditional pharmacy that we have known the past, 2,000 plus years, into the digital era, and help them thrive as the most important pillar, I find, of the health industry. I'm working on it. I've worked, I would say the starting point has been at Merck Consumer Health, where we have done a lot with and for pharmacies. But in my current job, I feel like I have a lot of room and space to co-create with pharmacies, especially in the COVID era now, and the challenges it poses on the whole industry, but especially on the pharmacists. I'd love to bring in my expertise, my creativity, and innovation to make pharmacies bloom in this area, and help them, support them with technology, help them maintain and grow their business, grow their patient base in this digital era.
So, with that in mind, what is your top marketing tip? What's that killer bit of advice that has done you well over the last 20 years or so, and you plan to use for the next 20 years or so?
Yeah, so I think regardless of the industry, regardless of the category you're working in as a marketeer, you need to have, one or two mantras and magic words you latch onto. For me, that one is idea. I believe in ideas, and big ideas always find their ways to become even bigger. And that was actually from Patrice Louvet, who is the CEO of Ralph Lauren. He used to be my boss when I was working in the color category with P&G years ago. This is like 14 years ago. And we had a good discussion about what really counts. And my takeaway from him was to put the effort into creating or identifying what's a great, brilliant idea, and everything else will follow that, versus putting a lot of effort into a mediocre idea that then will always feel like carrying water up the hill. So that's the one thing that I would give as advice, and I that's one of my magic weapons, so to speak. That in any environment, now it's the third company I'm working in my career, Walgreens Boots Alliance. I always try to focus on or hone in on what's the idea, what's the core of the idea, and try to make sure that we stop the clock when we've identified that greatness, that great idea, and everything else comes from it. That means that I have to also spend some time with that I mean my team, the marketing function, now in my current job, the larger team also in the countries, that we have the same understanding of what we're after. And so, by the book, the idea needs to give you goosebumps. It needs to be fresh, new. And so, if my mom were to expose to it, she'd be wowed by it. And it needs to be very, very flexible to carry itself, especially now, into social media for people to make their own. And so I've been in my new job 7 months now. I've tried my best to share this thinking, to share this mantra with my folks and with my teams. And I have no doubt that those where we say, hey, this is a great idea, that they will also big time come out. I find it also reversely said with mentees over the years. You have people that you have, collected, let's say, for lack of a better wording, colleagues, some of them become friends, and you coach and mentor them. I always tell them also to not spend their time and their efforts and the energy of other people on mediocrity, on mediocre ideas, that it's always better to go for one thing that has a huge potential versus doing 10 smaller things that will not be remembered. So that would be probably my advice.
This episode of the Shiny New Object podcast is brought to you in partnership with MadFest. Whether it's live in London or streamed online to the global marketing community, you can always expect a distinctive and daring blend of fast-paced content, startup innovation pitches, and unconventional entertainment from MadFest events. You'll find me causing trouble on stage, recording live versions of this podcast, and sharing a beer with the nicest and most influential people in marketing. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com. So we're at the halfway stage now. So we're now going to talk about your shiny new object, which we both came up with an odd title for before we started recording this. We agreed on digital empathy, which sounds a bit ridiculous. But can you explain what that means and why I forced you into using that title for this podcast?
You lured me into it, right? So it's actually the heightened importance of empathy in the digital era, the time that we're in. And I would have a year ago probably talked about personalization, talked about different shiny new objects. But now, with COVID being the reality, there is millions, if not billions, of people who have been impacted in a severe way. Even if they're not shaken in their jobs, in their way of life has changed. And I find that the thing that is going to now enable brands and marketeers to connect with their shoppers, consumers, is to re-explore the notion of empathy into their insights, going deeper under the skin, understanding the mindset they're in, how they're feeling, and genuinely shift gears towards communicating with them in that new, different mindset. So what makes me what shakes me, actually surprises me, is that as a consumer, I'm exposed to a lot of content from brands that continue to communicate as if nothing has happened. And probably they've made their plans a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. There's rollout plans if you happen to be in the UK, and it was like the fifth country to roll out a campaign, and it takes a while. It arrives here. By the time it arrives, the shootings from 2019, the concept back there.
Can you give me an example of that? Is there a brand that you've seen in the last sort of 24 hours where you're like, really? Like, you do realize there was a pandemic on? Just help us understand how you're seeing that specifically.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't want to call out individual brand, but for the healthcare category, where I have a heightened interest, obviously, one big French company I noticed is bombarding me with with tummy products that you may be having upset tummy, diarrhea, etc. And the context, the insight, how it is shot, it is so not in line with the reality of majority of us. And if it's about me, as in this is happening on digital, so on my phone, I'm consuming the content that they're bombarding me with, I cannot relate to it at all as a consumer, because it is how I was living as a manager, as a leader a year and a half ago. My new reality is I have 15 square meter office slash bedroom that I've been in all the time. I'm not running around, in suits and whatever, and flying from Colombia to Philippines to catch the next training and greet the people. So my life has significantly changed. And unless a brand recognizes, they seem to have somehow identified me, probably, as a manager, whatever, active on LinkedIn, however they're doing their profiling, they've identified me as their target group, but their content is so not in line with what's going on, and it's rather a turnoff to me. And said it positively, for a heightened ability to bond with me, you need to show me that you understand me right now. And I feel like this is how millions, if not billions, out there tick, right? And those who do more of the same, they get also a mediocre at best response from me. But those who make the effort to recognize the odd situation that we're in, and especially because there's a possibility to personalize and tailor make the targeting, we're working on several paths on that. You're reaching then high likely your target group, and you have that chance to connect with them. If you miss out on the insights of the past year, I think you just disqualify yourself. That's why I think that, towards professionals, we communicate and interact and work together with pharmacies and pharmacists. The biggest driver, at least for me, as a, in certain areas, at least as a decision taker, is what's the insight, and then what's the realness, and how is it embedded in the real life of pharmacists. Equally for the patients, for consumers, shoppers, on any of the brands we are promoting jointly, maybe with a supplier from different various categories. We try and make sure that we build into our thinking, our ideas with our partners from WPP, that we're hitting the nail on the head, and that we're not doing more of the same. We're not ignoring the situation that our consumers are in. I find that this is, I don't want to speculate on how long the situation with COVID and its consequences will last. But for sure, for the next year, it will still be on to the full extent. And the physical restrictions as well as the economic consequences. And I would wish for every marketeer to to shake themselves and their teams and to review with a very critical eye if what they're doing is still relevant, and if they've qualified their content, however many months ago, if it still holds true. And
So how does a brand do that? So someone listening to this podcast is going, yeah, digital empathy. Yeah, you're right. We've got to stop running those ads that have people flying in business suits from different South American countries, whatever it is. But so it's one thing saying it, but how do you do it? Marketers aren't necessarily known for their empathy. They're good at telling the story of the brand. So how do you move forward with this? What are the steps that a brand listening to this should be taking to make sure that they are being digitally empathetic, as we say?
So I think there are two aspects to it. One is the talent piece, right? So as we recruit, we put teams together, we put the right people to the driving seat of development, communication development. We need to make sure that we have talent that has actually the feeling, the empathy, and has their that special what it takes to feel for other people's situation. I find that critical for marketeers to be able to recognize what actually resonates with their consumers more than ever. I believe that the needle has moved from being more transactional into a matter of heart, especially over the past year. And so companies, leaders will need to pay attention that their marketeers are able to empathize with their consumers. So that's one aspect to it. The other one, I think, big time underscores the importance of market research and analytics. So both on the qualitative side to refresh your insights, to redo your consumer closeness. And I know people, who would have normally spent 2 days with their family to find out their habits on toilet paper. It's impossible to do, right, because of COVID. But there are alternative, again, digital ways to show empathy and to connect with the consumer and to really, really understand how, in the context of a certain category, their life has changed and move on. And in some other categories, it may have not changed, then the context has. So market research has heightened importance. We can, if I'm critical, we may be even not doing enough, me having this heightened awareness. And so we're investing into that area to really make sure that everything we do is in sync with the emotional world and the context that our consumers and our customers are in.
And what new forms of market research are you seeing that you think are interesting, given that the person-to-person version is less possible these days?
So on quantitatively, I don't think that there are big differences from a methodology perspective. So I was just reviewing with the team on social media, the big suppliers. We all know what are the means of analytics and data that we can get from them to better understand what content jives better, which ones have the potential to go viral and everything. So I don't think that there's a big change on that front. I find that the qualitative area has changed big time, where it was more about connecting personally, maybe one-to-one, two-on-one, and people are obviously, consumers are either banned or are feeling a little iffy about getting close with others, right? So this whole qualitative research territory has gone down to almost zero. So it's all online, and therefore the ability to go under the skin, that's what I was saying, to capture the realness is reduced down to 2 dimensions. I find that's why you need to have absolutely fantastic market researchers on the team to be able to take out the best out of the tools that we have within the restrictions, the physical restrictions we have in the COVID era, to be able to have those rich insights, deliver the rich insights for their teams. If there are new methodologies, I'm not aware that, honestly, I may not be the best one to answer this question. If there are people, please reach out to me on LinkedIn and let me know. At least I have not been on the forefront on that. I'm relying on same or similar methodologies, realizing that on the qualitative front, it takes a bigger effort to go out and have that personal contact. So we try to do, luckily, I'll say, Walgreens Boots Alliance, we are in a sector that has a pivotal role, especially these times, to support and help people and curb the spread of the virus. And in that context, with all the measures that are taken in the pharmacies, you still have a pharmacy that's open, people that are professionals that are there to help and support. So to the best that I can here in London, I go and visit pharmacies and hear about the new daily life of pharmacists and insights that they hear from their patients and shoppers. And that's how I'm trying to address that area of the qualitative research, Tom.
So, unfortunately, we're coming towards the end of the podcast. Now, you hinted that you don't mind people reaching out to you on LinkedIn. So, I will assume that that's the best way to get in touch with you. But quick question, what makes a killer outreach to you on LinkedIn?
I mean, there are, honestly, I in the meantime, I have moved on also to a more heartless approach to the hundreds of folks offering stuff, and without recognizing my context and my situation. So I have now gotten used to saying no thanks to those, but I read through all messages for sure, and interact also with folks who may be asking a brilliant question or share on something that I may have previously posted. So I'm very much open from whichever industry, geography, people that I may not even know, as marketeers, as interested people in marketing, and very much happy to build on the stimulus or the question to be answered. Absolutely, very open. So I am very reachable on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Atilla, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tom, for having me.
Hi, just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the Shiny New Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That'd just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And yeah, if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest, or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.